Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick930, and this is a retrospective look at Battlefield 3. Battlefield 3 was made available for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC in fall 2011, and was a massive success. The console version of the game featured most of the same content, but the maximum online player count per match was significantly lower, and the game targeted a locked 30 FPS, with some serious compromises to graphics. The superior PC version featured much larger maps with incredible visuals and some pretty beefy PC requirements, making it the new can it run Crisis game for years to come. DICE went above and beyond to make Battlefield 3 the most realistic looking game ever made, with the help of the new and improved FROSTBITE 2.0 engine. In addition to the groundbreaking graphics, Battlefield 3 also sought to take the best parts of the previous Battlefield games and make one massive epic shooter game that would once and for all take the crown back from Call of Duty. Unfortunately, the lackluster single-player campaign and several bugs and balancing issues kept it from becoming the COD killer it intended to be. BF3 featured a completely brand new single-player story with 12 missions to play, each showcasing the engine's incredibly hyper-realistic visuals. Unfortunately, this is all the single-player managed to accomplish, because the story itself felt pretty uninspired. You play as Sergeant Blackburn and play through flashbacks in each level that piece together the events leading up to Blackburn's interrogation. The story is pretty cut and paste, with American soldiers invading a Middle Eastern city, only to find out that the real enemy were the Russians the entire time. And they also have a nuke. It's a pretty unoriginal plot, and the single player was received negatively by most critics and players, and gave DICE a reputation for having pretty crappy story campaigns. Battlefield 3's gameplay, on the other hand, made several massive steps forward for the franchise. New player animations and movement helped to speed up the gameplay, with players capable of reloading while they're sprinting, and the ability to vault over waist-high objects. Players could now dive into a prone position, which also makes a return after being absent from the franchise since 2142. Player progression has been greatly enhanced, with hundreds of ranks to unlock, tons of awards, and 10 attachments for every primary firearm to earn through kills. There were even assignments that challenged players to complete specific tasks to unlock some of the newer DLC weapons and skins. Players could now fully customize their character and weapon loadout with tons of unlockable attachments, skins, and weapons to choose from. The same level of customization managed to find its way to the game's vehicles as well. This level of customization made it so every match of Battlefield 3 felt different from the last, with players using M16s as sniper rifles with long-range scopes and bipods, while other players use the M16 while they're parachuting in with a grenade launcher and blinding people with flashlights. The sandbox over-the-top warfare finally returned and improved upon everything that the franchise had tried to do in the past in terms of combat. There were only 4 classes in BF3: Medic, Engineer, Support, and Recon. The medics had assault rifles and could equip medical bags, defibrillator paddles, and grenade launchers. Players in Battlefield 3 could still hide behind cover and recover their health through health regen, just like in Bad Company 2. But now there were actual numerical values for health on the heads-up display, making it easier to tell if you were close to dying. The Engineer had carbine rifles and 3 different types of rocket launchers: the RPG, the anti-air, and the Javelin. Each weapon felt incredibly effective, and engineers would need to adjust their loadout between spawns to help combat vehicles on the map. Engineer had several landmines to help destroy enemy vehicles, and a repair torch to repair friendly vehicles. In addition to this, Engineer had a special remote-controlled drone called the EOD bot. This device acted as sort of a bomb defusal robot and allowed players to defuse enemy explosives, repair friendly vehicles, and even attack enemy soldiers with a humiliating kill. These were a pain to control though, and weren't all that effective, but they were good for a quick laugh now and again, and sometimes you could even use them to arm the MCOMs in rush mode. The support had light machine guns, C4 plastic explosives, and mortars. The mortars were an interesting mechanic that allowed players to see a small minimap on their screen and fire at enemies that were spotted by your teammates. The Recon class had sniper rifles that could fire extremely long distances, and long-distance shots awarded players with distance score to help keep track of their record kills. Recon also had spawn beacons similar to the ones introduced in Battlefield 2142, and they could also deploy a radar device called the Tugs, which helps spot enemies on the minimap within a few meters. The MAV was a remote-controlled UAV that could be deployed to scout the area and would display enemies in thermal imaging. Battlefield 3 marks the first time in the series where long-range scopes from sniper rifles, and also assault rifles that used a 6x scope or above, would have scope glint. players being aimed at by an enemy sniper could see a white glint in the distance that made it much easier to identify where you were being shot from, helping to minimize the overpowered sniper problem that the series has had issues with since the start. Vehicles were given the same treatment as the class customization, with players capable of changing vehicles' ammo type, armor, radar, imaging devices, and much more. BF3 featured heavy tanks, APCs, Amtrak transports, red boats, attack helicopters, little birds, anti-aircraft jeeps, and the significantly larger map size allowed for another big return to the series: fighter jets. The disabled mechanic was also first introduced in Battlefield 3, meaning if a vehicle reached a certain minimum damage, the vehicle would catch fire and slowly begin to lose more health until it exploded. This gave players a chance to escape and fight on foot for a last-ditch effort, and made engaging enemy vehicles a more viable option when on foot. Players could still join squads and communicate directly with each other, but these squads were limited to only 4 players, and there was no team commander to help coordinate actions. Also, the microphones for the console versions of the game never actually functioned correctly. And oddly enough, the PC version of the game had absolutely no form of voice communication built in, meaning PC gamers were required to use a third-party program like TeamSpeak or Ventrilo, or just type in-game. Battlefield 3 featured both Conquest and Rush again, but also included Team Deathmatch for the first time in the franchise. Squad Deathmatch also returned, but the maps seemed to be designed more with Rush in mind than anything else. Most of the maps had a linear flow to them that could technically be played in Conquest, but the Conquest versions always felt a bit smaller in scale. Battlefield 3 featured 9 maps at launch, with 20 more being added in paid DLC. The first DLC featured 4 maps and a ton of weapons. I think there were 10 weapons. And the first 4 maps were all remakes of Battlefield 2 maps, including Strike at Kharkiv, Gohov Oman, and another rendition of Wake Island. The second DLC featured 4 more maps, all focusing on close-quarter combat. All of these maps had no vehicles and forced players into a much smaller map with a larger level of destruction. The third DLC featured the complete opposite, with absolutely massive maps, the biggest in the entire franchise still to this day, and huge vehicles like the AC-130 gunship and light tanks. The fourth DLC took players to the epicenter of a massive earthquake disaster in Iran, with completely destroyed city streets, cracked skyscrapers, and tremors that shook everybody's screen. And the final DLC for BF3 featured 4 maps that really had no overall theme. This last DLC introduced motorcycles to the game and some of the better maps, honestly, but nothing really stands out. I honestly can't remember anything about that DLC. Battlefield 3 featured no free DLC other than the Back to Kharkiv DLC that was part of a pre-order deluxe edition incentive at launch. So it's easy to see why Battlefield 3 was a significantly larger game than Bad Company. The massive scale and sense of epic war had finally returned to the franchise, and simultaneously set a benchmark for graphical quality in video games, becoming the first game to finally look exceptionally better than the Crysis game series. Call of Duty had finally begun to see a slight decline in their own release with Modern Warfare 3, and Battlefield could do no wrong at this point. Well, that was until the next game of the franchise, and we'll talk all about that in the next episode of Gaming Retrospectives. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.